Good evening, everyone, for another session of Tuesday's Thoughts. We're here again. My sound engineer is on leave. She's off out this evening, some theatre or something, I think, watching somebody do something somewhere. But anyway, that's how it is. And fair play, she's allowed leave from time to time. I will let her. But anyway, it's 7 o'clock on Tuesday, the 14th of November. So I'm just waiting for one person to pop on, but then I'm going to crack on. Welcome if you are watching later on in the week, or later on in the month, or sometime you just happen to be scrolling, you see it on Facebook, or good evening, Sonia, or you see it on YouTube, or you see it on LinkedIn, because you're kind of just merrily strolling along. So this evening we're looking at moving on from a difficult relationship. Now, part is to do with after last week's session, we had great interaction. Helen, good evening to you. And anyone else that's watching or will be watching, but you remain anonymous and you just watch with your pad and notes and so forth. Great to have you with us this evening. So partly this is to do with two conversations with men from last week's session. One of the guys said to me, "How can you see you're talking about business?" He said, "You're talking about me." I said, "But listen, even some of the stuff that I deal with, I share. I'm wrestling with stuff myself. So it's not a case about me here and people over there. We're in this thing together." And this whole thing about moving on from a difficult relationship, somebody made a comment about, you remember last week I spoke about sometime what happens in lots of relationships. People get together and they marry, or they get together at the height of emotion. That subsides, and once that does subside, look at each other, they've got nothing in common, and maybe there's a child or two in the relationship, so they're kind of stuck. Or you've got some people, they get together, height of emotion, it subsides, the relationships, the thing subsides, but there's enough to kind of keep going. So that's the kind of backdrop of that. Now, the other thing I'd just like to mention as I continue, I should have said my name is Delroy Hall. I'm a trained counsellor, lecturer, trainer, and psychotherapist with well over 30 years experience in all those fields. One of the things somebody asked me about people I use in terms of my examples. Now, sometimes when I say he, it's a she, and sometimes when it's she, it's a her. And when I say down south, it perhaps was up north. Sometimes when I say up north, it's down south. So you'd never know the gender or where it was, whether north or south. But I really do anonymize people. And quite often I draw on things. And I'm not seeing these clients for a long, long time. In fact, I don't use things that are current because it's not fair. I don't think I should be using things that are so current. So I'm going to talk about moving on from a difficult relationship. Somebody said to me last week, "Why do you have to stop at 30 minutes?" Tonight I'm going to have to stop because I've got an appointment at 7:45, so I'll be stopping around about 7:30. But I will continue. Some sessions will go on longer, and I appreciate the fact if you want to stay, by all means, take notes and so forth. Please do. But tonight we'll finish about 7:30. So I want to just define a difficult relationship. So these are some of the characteristics of a difficult relationship, as if you don't know what a difficult relationship already. So these are some of the characteristics you'll find in difficult relationships: lying, unable to communicate, cheating, controlling, jealousy, being possessive, disrespecting, insulting. Good evening, Norma. Good to see you this evening. Insulting. A friend of mine spoke about a relationship that was in, and she and the partner got into an argument, and he started to insult her. For me, you've crossed the line. In one sense, there is a way back, but there's got to be lots of hard work. And men, if you listen to this either live or in the future, there's no way we can be insulting or belittling or controlling our partners, and then we expect them to be making passionate love to us. It ain't gonna happen. It just will not happen. So men, be careful on how we interact, and goes for women as well, how we interact with each other. Also, insulting, as I said before, but also stonewalling. So stonewalling is you're in a relationship and you want to talk about something that's really important, almost a conflict, and the person you're with blanks out, zones out, doesn't engage, they're busy, they tune out, they don't want to engage with it at all. That's called stonewalling. So these are kind of things of difficult relationships. Note, healthy relationships make you feel good. Bad relationships don't. And I'm not talking about relationships where you're going through hard times. There are just some people in relationship, their characteristics are bad, it's poor, and it doesn't help whatsoever. So healthy relationships make you feel good, bad ones don't. So, and there's another thing I just want you to take note of. If you or your partner ended a relationship and there is no sense of loss, you perhaps were never connected in the first place. And that does happen. People can get together. It can be, I've known couples get together and what they say, Delroy, the sex was hot, but then things go absolutely pear-shaped. And then when they separate, there's no sense of loss. All you do is having good sex, but you're not bonded emotionally. But also as well, I'd say as well, if it keeps happening, something is going on. If it keeps happening to you where a relationship has ended and there's no sense of loss, what is it that's happening to you in relationships where you don't feel a connection to the person? One-off maybe, but if it's repetitive, there's something that's perhaps going on which needs some attention. So listen to this quote. To fully accept, so in terms of moving on, to fully accept a breakup and move on, there's two things that needs to happen. You need to, one, understand what's happened, and you need to acknowledge the part you played in the breakup of the relationship. That's really important. So one, to fully accept and to fully accept a breakup and to move on, to move on healthily. Two things, you've got to understand what's happened and you need to acknowledge your part in the breakup of the relationship. Now, this is not about self-blame, it's about being responsible. That's really important. So understanding what you've done or what you do. Good evening, Jenny. Good to see you this evening. Thank you for your presence again. You need to understand that what you do has an impact on the relationship. So understand your choices and the impact it has on the relationship. So if we then take the time out to say the relationship has ended, what part did I play? You can say, what role did I play in the development of the relationship? What part did I play in the breakup of the relationship? If you learn from that, it just means that you're able to better learn. And secondly, you'd avoid repeating the same mistake again. What happens quite often, I'll be doing a session in a few weeks' time on, there's some people who I've met over the years, they just keep being attracted to the same type of individual. Women are attracted to men who are violent, even though externally you don't see it. Men are attracted to a certain type of woman. And I dare say most of my work has been with heterosexual. I have worked with gay couples before, but the same thing happens. Attracted to the same type of individual. They do the same dirty on you, but it's a different individual, but the same thing takes place. I certainly remember over the years working with individuals, 7 or 8 relationships, 7 or 8 affairs. What's going on? Something is going on with you that seems to attract a certain type of individual. We're looking at that in a few weeks' time. So see the relationship for what it is. This assists in moving on. If we're in a relationship and it ends and we don't understand what we've been in, we're going to repeat the same thing again. So one of the great things, you would have heard me say this before about learning things, but I'll say this about relationships as well. When a relationship goes south, pants, it's not a phrase that I use, but some of you will know it, tits up, it goes absolutely wrong. Good evening, Dave. Good to see you. And anyone else who's joining this evening on LinkedIn, Twitter, or on YouTube or Facebook. It goes wrong. It provides an opportunity for you to take a good look at what's going on. But what we do quite often, and I've seen it so often, somebody ends a relationship or they're in a relationship that's ended today, Tuesday. By Thursday, they've met somebody. By Saturday, they're moving in with somebody. And what that does, you don't get a chance to recover from the previous relationship and you're apt to make the same mistake again. And the same hurt is going to kind of take place. So when there's a breakup, see the relationship for what it is. This assists moving on. What helps it to move on is being honest. Remember that great quote by Benjamin Hardy, progression begins with honesty. So if we're going to progress, if we're going to move on healthily, we must be honest with ourselves and nobody else, with ourselves and what's happened with the relationship. Relationships don't end. So this is a quote by Mark Manson. Relationships don't end because the two people did something wrong to each other. They end because two people are something wrong for each other. Love that quote. Relationships don't end because the people did something wrong for each other. They end because the two people are something wrong for each other. So sometimes some relationships end because it's come to a natural thing, or it's just not a good fit. And somebody has to be brave enough in the relationship. I'll be saying something about that in a bit. Somebody has to be brave enough in the relationship to say, do you know what, this ain't working, and not drag it on, and then it just kind of gets really kind of complicated. So when relationships end. Oh, right. Good evening, Tina. Yeah, good to see you this evening. And again, anyone else who just happened to be scrolling and all that type of stuff and watching and later on and catch up, yeah, please welcome. Thank you much indeed for your time. We'll be about 30 minutes, so 10 minutes gone already. So hang on, and hopefully give you something that's really important. And also, it might not be relevant for you, but if you know somebody who's trying to move on and they're really stuck, share it with them. Share it on LinkedIn, on YouTube. Give them the link, send it on, and if they want to be in contact with me, as some people do, please do that. When relationships end on a bitter note, sometimes it is really difficult to move on. So moving on means getting back to a healthy routine. One of the things that you want to have to be careful of when you meet somebody, you want to make sure that you still do stuff that's for you. One of the things you don't want to do is get so locked into the other person's world that you lose who you are. Sometimes you get involved with somebody and almost you don't see your friends anymore. There's a kind of social disconnection from your friends and so forth. No, you can't do that. There still has to be a way that you kind of connect with people, even if you're in a relationship. And if you're in a relationship and the early signs are this person doesn't want you to meet with your friends, not because your friends are mischievous or getting into bad stuff, but the person you're with is controlling. You need to, I don't care how good they look. I don't care how sweet kissing they are. If you see the signs of controlling and possessiveness, get the hell out of there. You can't hang around before you get too deep and get kind of connected with this individual. So moving on means getting back into a healthy routine. Some folks carry on. So what some folks do, a relationship's ended and they carry on as if nothing has happened. That is a recipe for disaster. It's fatal, it's unhealthy, leads to mental stress and lots of difficulties. We must acknowledge what has taken place. That's really important. I'm not into positive thinking whereby you ignore what's going on. See the reality, what's happened, the pain of what's happened, but yes, certainly have a positive mind when you see what's happening. But if you're not seeing what's happening, that's kind of, or you're in denial, that's not really helpful. Oh, hang on, what's this? Tina said, Dr. Delroy, hit him with it. Pretty face and bad. Yeah, oh my goodness me. Hey, let's not get started on that one. Listen, I really don't mind how good. Oh, Delroy, you don't know how handsome he is. Yeah, you're right. I don't know. Delroy, you don't know how good looking she is. Man, she's hot. She can be hot till she's hot no more. If the character ain't there, run for the hills. That's what I'm saying to you. Get the hell out of there as quickly as you can. So then you don't get into a difficult relationship then, and then you then have the problems of trying to move out of it. So acceptance and acknowledgement in a relationship that is ended. The quicker you do that, the better. One of the things I've said from bereavement, when things go wrong, difficult workplaces, loads of stuff, it's about acknowledging what has taken place, even though it's painful, it's hurting, there's tears, there's no stuff coming. It's about being honest with what's happening. Remember that quote, progression begins with honesty. And when a relationship breaks up, the quicker we accept that it's broken up and we acknowledge it, the quicker we're able to accept the end of it, the quicker we're able to move on from the relationship, the easier it is, of course, we can then begin to be in a new relationship, but not straight away. In due course, after you've been able to step back, not even lick your wounds, but you've looked at what's taken place, you've looked how you've been hurt, you've looked at the role you played in the relationship, coming together and breaking down. You look at yourself, you do what you need to do, and then you're able to go on with a new self. I've always said to individuals, there's no point to people separating if you want to break from each other and you're going to come back just as you were. That is just not good. If you're going to break, but make sure you're working on something that helps you a better individual. So when and if you go back to your ex-partner, you're not the same person. You have to be working on something so that you, in a sense, they are meeting a new person and you're meeting a new person also. So life never ends with a breakup. It just takes a break. And this is the big question. How then do we move on when we've been in a difficult relationship? The difficult relationship for me also includes if you've been cohabiting, living with, or married as well. Let's be honest, some people's marriages have been absolutely awful. Absolutely awful. So one of the things that you need to do, and I hear it all the time, we've been together for 2 years, but we're going to remain friends. It doesn't work. Cut it completely. Cut off the connection with the person, with your ex, end that particular chapter and resist the urge to find out what they're doing on Facebook. You go on LinkedIn, you go on Twitter to see what they're doing. Cut it out completely. If you want to move on, you need to acknowledge the loss and focus on important things. So you acknowledge the loss, it's ended, you're wounded, you're broken, and tears and so forth. Acknowledge the loss, but then begin to focus on things that are really, really important. The other thing that you do, some of you might find this kind of funny, but if this person is giving you gifts, get rid of everything that reminds you of them. I remember when I was looking at this stuff, I remember a guy at school. I don't even know if he watches this, so I ain't gonna mention his name. So I'm going back in the 70s. Any girl he dated, if he ever gave them gifts, he demanded the gifts back. And I remember him doing that. He wanted it back. If you gave them a ring or a necklace or whatever it was, he wanted it back. Now, what I'm saying, I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm saying to you, if somebody's broken up with you, what you do, you get rid of everything that reminds you of them. If it's items they give you, put it in a box and get rid of the box. Throw it away, donate stuff. Some people burn things because it's interesting. We haven't got time for this, but fire symbolizes so much. Fire symbolizes warmth, but also fire symbolizes purification. You know, burning things. So here, what Tina says: small courts claim. That's the stuff. Yeah, he did it. He was terrible for it. He really, really was. He was awful. I thought, gosh, oh Lord. You can't say that. Listen, Jenny's got a question, so let's share it. You mentioned getting back into a healthy routine. Some people don't like routine, prefer to chase a feeling. Oh, yes, they do. For example, excitement, risk, and even fear of the unknown. Yeah. Do you think that this could be the reason why they keep doing the same thing over again by starting relations with people? Yeah, absolutely. You know, what you've asked is a really, really good question, Jenny. I think let me just go through the question. You mentioned getting back in every routine. Some people don't like routines. Yeah, because for lots of people, routine is boredom, but we need boredom. Sometimes people chase a feeling. Very, very true. For example, excitement and risk and even fear of the unknown, because what it does, if I can just clear this for a moment so I can see you, what it does, it takes them away from reality. Reality is too painful. So goodness me, let me not deal with reality. Let me kind of get off on one. But you know what? The pain of reality will come back to haunt them. And you can be in a relationship whereby they keep doing this, and being with them is a nightmare. They're never satisfied. Then just being with them is a really nightmare. They're difficult to be with. You can't work things through because they're always after the next buzz, and you are not that way inclined. So Jenny says, do you think this could be a reason why they keep doing the same thing over and over by starting relationships with people who won't be around? Absolutely. Sometimes that's also a fear of intimacy and closeness. that quite often you find those individuals, the relationships are very, very superficial. The relationships are not deep at all, very, very superficial, because the idea of something deep frightens the living daylights out of them. They want it, but there's a lots of being scared and very timid around a closeness and being vulnerable to another individual. I hope that answers your question. And part of the work that I do with individual is to find out exactly what's going on, why they keep getting involved quite often in these destructive relationships. And sometimes they know it's destructive, but they keep doing it. And sometimes it's trying to find out what's going on for them. Sometimes it's poor, very low self-esteem, lack of self-love. They don't think they're worthy of good relationships, a whole range of stuff. But your question, Jen, has been absolutely brilliant. Here's Carol this evening. Yeah, it's really wonderful when you find the courage to move on. It's liberating and you gain your own identity. Thanks for sharing some great. Yeah, it really is. And it's right, finding the courage. You have to find it to move on. I stayed some time ago. Good evening to you, Michael. I remember staying some time ago with somebody, and it was his second marriage. But when I met him, his wife had died about a year before. It was her third marriage. She'd been in 2 extremely violent relationships. And when she told her mother, the second marriage, that her husband was physically abusing her, her mother's response was, I don't know what you're complaining for. He's a decent man. He goes out to work, provides for you and the kids. And that was her pat response to being physically abused by her husband. Anyway, she then was able to find the courage to move on. And she met this particular individual he really allowed her to flourish. He really, really did. And she went to train as a counselor because obviously it was something important for her. And then she did a master's in counseling and something else. So she did a dissertation on why people stay in bad marriages, destructive marriages. And as she interviewed people, what came up, I think it's women, time and time and time again, it was fear. What would people say? Will I manage on my own? What will happen to the children? It was fear that kept them locked into a really unhappy situation. So yes, Carol rightly said, it's really wonderful when you find the courage to move on. It's not easy, but you have to find it. It's liberating, she says. I think these words are, it's liberating, and you regain your own identity. That's absolutely important. So this thing about fear, it can keep us kind of locked in. And even moving on, sometimes we can really get obsessed with the relationship, even though it's broken, because we fear that there's no other person can be as good as the person we just left, even though they're horrible to you. So they're just something to think about. So first thing, end the chapter, end the relationship. Don't keep you. Now, if years later you see each other and you have a break, or not even years, but maybe, depending how long you've seen each other, that's different. But to keep on being friends when the relationship has ended, no, that's not kind of healthy. Hang on, let's have a look. That's to answer my question. It also seems a contradiction that they admire others in long-term successful relationships, but they didn't want to invest in their own ability to have one. Yeah, do you know? Again, it's quite often it's fear. Sometimes it's being scared. Sometimes for some individuals, they've been in their experience of kind of the chief caregivers or the parents hasn't been good, so they just think that a long-term relationship, it doesn't happen, or it happens to other people, but not for us. I recall when my wife was working at a school, we've been together 10 years, and she said the kids were shocked because they never knew anybody who'd spent 10 years in a relationship. So it depends on people's experience. So this whole thing about, as you're right, the word you've used there was really important. I think it's important to say it's about investing in yourself. It's not about a therapist getting money. It's about investing in yourself so that your future is better. That's what it's about. Hang on, Carol has said that much more happy with my Chihuahua, loving and faithful. Yeah, dogs tend to be, and in some cases as well, some women call men dogs anyway. But anyway, let's not even go there on a PC evening. So yes, but yeah, this whole thing about moving on, relationships absolutely critical. Not just because it makes us happy, but in terms of our well-being, it's just so important to be in good relationships. So So in terms of moving on, how we do that, so cut off the connection with your ex, get rid of everything. If things are meaningful, if such items are meaningful, you can actually give it back to them. You can actually give it back to them, which is very different from asking for it. And if you don't want to give it back to them, you can pawn it, donate it, sell it, or give it away. Right. So this whole thing about separating, you need a clean break so you can breathe and you can function. And as Carol rightly said, you find your own identity. For some people, their identity is lost, and it takes time to, it's not so much going back to your old self, because you can't go back to your old self, but you build on the experience so that you kind of grow into a new person, stronger, wiser, more in touch with who you are, more in touch with identity, more in touch in terms of what you want for yourself as a human being. Absolutely important. So in terms of how moving on, listen, if you need to shed some tears, men, women, cry the tears. Crying is helpful, but not forever. Sylvia Smith, in her article, 15 Ways on How to Accept and Move On from a Relationship, she said, if you find the crying is going on and on and on and on and on, make every effort to get out of this whirlwind of melancholy. A friend of mine, she ended her relationship with her husband, and she said, Delroy, for 3 months I was in bed. And then one day my mother said, okay, that's it. It's time to get up. And she said it was my mother who forcibly, not through holding her, but she said, no, it's time. You've had time. You've ended the relationship. It was a terrible marriage. You've ended the relationship. You've had the time. Now you need to start getting on with your life. So sometimes there's a pause. There has to be a pause sometimes, because we're so broken and we're so bruised. And even if she ended it, because she said it was a very, very unhappy relationship. She ended it, and she said she took to her bed for 3 months, clearly depressed. But then it was her mother 3 months later who said, okay, it's time to get going again. Gave her the space, gave her the time to begin the recovery process, reconnect with herself. And it was her mother, she said, that really kind of got her together. So shed tears if you need to. Get closure. Closure is really important. And get complete closure if you can. Now, it's interesting. You can be in a relationship and the person has ended it, but it's so vague, you don't know if they've ended it or not. So what you need to do is to find out what were they saying. And it is suggested you don't call them, you don't meet them in person, because that stirs up emotion. But send them an email. What were you saying? Because sometimes people are not clear. So you need to get closure. You need to get a definitive from the individual. Now, let me just say this to you. This happened to a friend of mine years ago, and I was so angry with her, and she knew I was angry. She was with somebody, lived in the same part of the country, the same city, and he sends her a text, I want a break. Really? And listen, if anybody's listening, you're in a relationship and your partner says to you via text, I want to break for a while, you know what? Tell them to sling the hook and don't come back. That is an immature way to end a relationship. Oh, hang on, what's it say? What if they keep coming back or follow you on socials? Well, if they keep coming back, it depends what they're coming back for. And quite often, no, not often. Look, I'll be honest. Sometimes people can come back purely for the sexual relationship, and once they're in bed with you, got what they want, they're off, and then they keep doing it. So there's something that you're doing that's allowing that to happen. Okay, and it could be, which does happen, they're not just sleeping with you, they're sleeping with other people as well. So that is something that can actually happen. And again, I know that it actually happens. So it's about being aware of what's taking place in people's lives. Okay, there are no breaks in marriage, only in a married relationship. Hey, listen, some people in marriage say they want to break as well. Seriously, they do. Right. I don't know if I don't know if you're making a reference or that's a general question. I wasn't talking about you necessarily. So, okay, yeah, so I'll be very careful what I say. So I think if you see, if people keep coming back, they're kind of twisted. Either they're twisting up your head or they're not clear. And in fact, you need to say to them, look, I can't keep doing this. You're either with me or not, but I'm not going to do this again. But again, like Carol said, you need to find the courage to do that. If they're not doing it, you need to find the courage to do it. And again, I've worked with people who had similarities. The person keeps coming back. The back for a while, then they're off again. The back for a couple of weeks, and they're off again. No, you need to, at some point. This is not messing. It's messing up with your head. You need to draw a line in the sand and say no. This ends. Right, there are no breaks in marriage. Yeah, okay, yeah, but some people do. They just want a break. They said, no, I'm moving out. I want a break. So it's amazing how people's relationships are configured. It's absolutely incredible. So get closure, really important. And one of the things that you need to, I'm going to finish on this for today. One of the things that you need to do if you're in a relationship, and it's, remember I said about acknowledging and accepting. That's really, really important. You need to acknowledge that it's ended and accept that it's ended. Either way, either acknowledge or accept. Either way, you need to face the reality of it. The relationship has ended. He ain't coming back. She ain't coming back. It's ended. Even if you want them back, it's ended. So one of the things we have to do is mourn the loss of the relationship. So mourning the loss, they take the idea from Kubler-Ross. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was a psychiatrist. But for some of you that don't know, was a psychiatrist who worked with terminally ill patients. And she noticed there was a kind of pattern as people were dying. There was a kind of pattern, and she kind of formulated a model, but she made it very clear. Some of you may know the model already, the 5-stage model: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So she said these are kind of 5 stages she saw people go through. At one time, there was this idea that people went from stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5. Now there's an understanding that it kind of ebbs and flows. Obviously, there's other models now, but she was the first one who kind of looked at people who were dying and noticed there was a pattern. First, there was a denial of what was taking place. The second thing, there was anger. Why is this happening to me? Bargaining. Quite often, people who have religious beliefs, or if the doctors can sort this out, well, I'm going to do this. And then the 4th is depression. The number 5 is acceptance. And so mourning the loss is allow ourselves to feel what we are experiencing. So one of the things, of course, is that quite a lot of people get stuck in the bargaining. Oh, what could have been? Oh, maybe if I do this, they'll get me back. And so let me try. If I do this, and maybe if I was a bit more attentive, and maybe if I did more stuff to please them. But you're forever giving, and then there's nothing really kind of coming back. So one of the things about sometimes the difficulty in ending the relationship, the person has ended it with you. They know it's ended, but in your mind, you're still holding on to the fact that maybe there might be a possibility they may come back. That can hold us back in moving on. We can't move on because there's this hope, even though the relationship was disastrous. And the reason, going back to the point by Jenny, that sometimes we know the relationship is terrible, but better the devil we know than the one we don't. So we stay with this kind of really unhealthy relationship, which doesn't help us at all. So be honest with yourself. So the reason why there's difficulty in you moving on, is it because you're holding on to something with the possibility you and he might get back together, or you and she, or whatever it is, might get back together again? That will cause the moving on to be quite difficult, because you've not got to the place of acceptance that this relationship has ended. So that is some of the hows. Cut off communication, get rid of everything the person has, shed tears if you need to, get closure as much as you can. If the ending has been vague, ask them for something definitive. And if you're not getting it, you then have to make that decision yourself. They've gone, they weren't very clear. And one of the ways, of course, and I will end with this, it's not even part of the notes, but it's just come to me, that sometimes unsent letters can be really helpful. Unsent letters, the person is still alive, you write a letter, but you don't send it. For goodness sake, please don't send it. I remember going into a counselling session when I was at the university. It's happened twice actually, and the opening lines are, "Well, I've done it then," and I said, "Done what?" I've wrote the letter. I sent it off. No, you were not meant to send it off. Gordon Bennett, you're not meant to send it off. It's called an unsent letter. A clue's in the word unsent. So you write the letter. So you use writing and the page to as a cathartic experience to express what you really want to say, but you don't send it. It's a way of dealing with some unpleasant emotions. So one of the ways, of course, if the person is vague and they're not forthcoming, maybe you need to take some action. And one of the ways, of course, is an unsent letter. You write, "Dear Michael" or "Dear Jane," whatever it is, and you use the process of writing to end it yourself. You're vague and so forth, but I'm ending it. That's closure. So in a sense, it's almost like you're having a conversation with the person on paper, but you're taking the point to end it. That's really important. Listen, I've taken 36 minutes of your time. Thank you for your questions, your input, and hopefully you had some thoughts that you'll kind of take away. If you've got friends who you know are struggling to move on from a relationship, please, session 2 will be next week. Some good stuff coming along, but obviously it's not so much the good stuff that I may or may not be doing, but the good stuff is what you take away and what you put into practice. That's what's really, really important. So enjoy the rest of your evening and enjoy the rest of your week. And we will meet each other again next Tuesday at 7 o'clock for part 2 of moving on from a difficult relationship. And I hope you found this really helpful. Please share it with your friends, work colleagues. Yeah, just do that. Thank you, Jenny and Sonia and Paulette and Dave and everyone else. Carol, your comments have been really, really helpful. And I think it was that's why I think it was really good seeing you all this evening. Thank you. Take care. Wish you well. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Speak to you soon. Take care. Bye bye. Okay, thanks, David. And thanks, Carol. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thanks, Norma. Take care. And Dee Dee. Yes, Dee Dee. I'll find out who Dee Dee is at some point. Take care. Cheers, everybody.